Sammy Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
When we had the referendum result, and given the bitterness during the result, I had absolutely no doubt that despite the vote that there was, the overwhelming vote, we were going to see a guerrilla warfare which would be conducted against the will of the people of the United Kingdom. And we have seen it over the last year and a half, fought out in this place and fought out in TV studios, newspapers, etc. And I think that the amendments that we have tonight to this bill fall into one of those two categories. People who will give a whole variety of reasons, but basically want to move amendments to this bill which keeps us essentially in the institutions of the EU, which bound us for so many years and which people voted to be free of. And on the other side, those who wish to remain true to the vote of the people and make sure that everything is done to deliver on the promises that were made during the referendum. Northern Ireland, unfortunately, and it's featured in nearly every speech here tonight, has been caught in the crossfire in that guerrilla warfare between those who wish to keep us in the EU and those who wish to honour the result of the referendum. And the border between Northern Ireland, the Good Friday Agreement, the peace in Northern Ireland has been thrown around willy-nilly. And to be quite frank, people in Northern Ireland feel abused in this whole process. I have heard people in this place talk about the Belfast Agreement as if it was their bedtime reading, and they probably don't even know what the document looks like. And yet it has been suggested that if we don't abide by those who wish to keep us in the customs union and a single market, we're going to have a hard border in Northern Ireland. And that's going to affect the peace. I don't actually know what this hard border is going to look like. But I can tell you one thing. If they think that a couple of border posts along the main road at Newry and the main road into Londonderry and the main road in Enniskillen is going to represent a hard border which will somehow protect the EU from the incursion of goods that they don't want into the place, then people don't even understand what it means. Or do we mean by a hard border we have a minefield around the border with watchtowers so that no lorries can sneak across the 300 and so roads, or people can't build sheds in the middle of a field where you put goods in one side in Northern Ireland and the other come out the other side in the Irish Republic? It's a ridiculous suggestion. And yet this is thrown up at us all the time. And we heard the Honourable Lady for Bristol who talked about the impact of this, and that the WTO would insist on this because the border and they had to protect trade. Well, the Irish Republic currently, of course, brings goods in from the rest of the world. Yeah. Do they stop every container that comes in? No, they don't. Do they stop 10% of the containers? No, they don't. They don't even stop 1%. In fact, Gambia stops more trade coming through its borders than what the Irish Republic does. So this idea that somehow or other every good that comes into the EU via Northern Ireland and then into the Republic is going to have to be stopped, it doesn't even match with common day practice. And of course, when it comes to collecting taxes, 13,000 lorries a year cross the border carrying drink to other parts of the United Kingdom. There's duty to be collected on it. Not one of them stopped because the duty is collected electronically by pre-notification, by trusted trader status. So you can protect your border and meet with WTO rules without having all of the kind of paraphernalia which has been suggested here tonight.
I wonder would they...
Oh, well, yes, certainly.
Thank my honourable friend for giving way. He is quite right. There seem to be an awful lot of people who don't really understand what goes on now at the border. But could I just ask him to say, why could anyone tonight who supports Northern Ireland even think of voting against new clause 37, which is a very clear putting out there that we want Northern Ireland to be treated the same way as the rest of the United Kingdom. If they do so, they're supporting, actually, the Republic of Ireland.
And I thank the member. And that's the whole point of New Clause 37. That first of all, it delivers on the promises that have been made by the government. It puts them into law. The second thing is it avoids the break-up of the United Kingdom and the kind of nonsense we're going to hear from the Scottish National Party that you can redefine the United Kingdom to have Northern Ireland and the UK excluded from it when it comes to trade issues. Of course, that's not, and indeed that would be against the Belfast Agreement, because the Belfast Agreement actually doesn't say a great deal about borders, but it does say something, and a lot, about the integrity of the United Kingdom, that it cannot be changed either by dictate from the EU or by demands from Dublin. It can only be changed with the will of the people of Northern Ireland. And yet the backstop arrangement which has been suggested is at the behest of the EU, which seems to disregard the most important part of the Belfast Agreement and has destabilised Northern Ireland as a result of that. I think it also yes, we'll give way, yes.
I'm grateful to him for giving way. He is, of course, right that the constitutional status of Northern Ireland has not been in dispute for a very long time and is undermined by the Belfast Good Friday Agreement. The only people that have started talking about the constitutional arrangement in Northern Ireland is as a result of Brexit. That is the only thing that has now started to trigger any discussion around the break-up of the United Kingdom, and I'm afraid his party has helped that process.
And that's the point I'm making, that this red herring has been thrown into the debate in order to try and persuade people like myself and people opposite to stay within the customs union and the single market. But it is a red herring, because, as I've said, it is not essential to have a hard border to be able to protect trade between the United Kingdom outside the EU and the Irish Republic inside the EU. There are other methods which are currently done. We've got a fiscal border, a regulatory border, a currency border, and yet we don't need to have checks at the moment. Why would that change once we leave the EU? The third thing is this, that New Clause 37 actually strengthens the Prime Minister's hand. Because when she goes into negotiations, and there will still be this badgering from Barnier and co to insist that there has to be a different regime of regulation, of law and of EU interference in Northern Ireland, it strengthens her hand to be able to say the Parliament of the United Kingdom has said in law we will not and cannot change the status of Northern Ireland. We can't have separate custom arrangements for Northern Ireland, and the law says that. Of course, it also protects Northern Ireland from being cut off from its biggest market. The Irish Republic isn't our biggest market. The whole of the EU isn't our biggest market. Over 60% of what Northern Ireland produces comes to GB. Yeah. Ironically, if the government in Dublin was thinking with its head, it would also recognise that the Barnier formula for the border is one which is detrimental to them as well, because, of course, the Barnier formula would have a border down the Irish Sea, cutting the Irish Republic off from its biggest market. Over 50% of its agricultural products come here, and yet it is concerned about the paltry border which accounts for 1.6% of its trade. And, you know, people just fail to understand why this should be the case, and why the government of the Republic should take that view. I believe that the Prime Minister does have an opportunity. This strengthens her hand, and in negotiations coming up to October, she still has got the opportunity to tell the EU, if you want our money, you have a fair deal. We'll prepare for a no deal if we can't get a good deal. And as far as trade is concerned, the balance of trade rests with us. If you want access to our markets, make sure we get access to your markets. That should be the approach. Get the handbag out, do a bit of swinging and get a good deal.
Honourable gentleman.